I'm going to spoil the ending of Mass Effect 3 in a big way. I'm also going to freely discuss the endings and story details of the entire trilogy, and some other games, movies, TV shows, and books might come up. So if you want to know what's going to get spoiled, check out the description. Let's dance, loco. Why the Mass Effect 3 ending was bad. The ending to Mass Effect 3 suffered from poor execution and a failure to deliver on what the series established as being important. A lot of the dialogue around the ending has been hyperbolic, with a mob of gamers going through the stages of acceptance, myself included, and this video is part of that, and a vocal crew of journalists hopping to the game's defense, stating that the ending was acceptable. In this case, the mob is right. Not all of the complaints with the game's ending are completely valid, but there is a mix of objective and subjective garbage in the ending that does drag the game down. It's a huge disappointment, because the game itself is truly wonderful and worthy of discussion as one of the greatest games of all time, right up until those last 10 minutes. It reminds me of a gymnast performing two amazing feats of acrobatic skill, and then on the third vault, the most amazing of them all, botching the landing. Issue number 1, the Deus Ex Machina. The Catalyst child that appears at the end of the game is a Deus Ex Machina, literally and figuratively. That the child is a core component of the ending is bad plot structure, but it's something that can be forgiven in my eyes. Ben Kacher of the Penny Arcade Report defended the ending on the grounds that the Deus Ex Machina plot solution had already been used at the beginning of the game when the Crucible plans were discovered on Mars. But having the plot center around acquiring a MacGuffin, instead of just uniting the forces of the galaxy to kill the Reapers on their own merits, isn't good plot structure either. Two wrongs don't make a right. Still, it's not the end of the world that the game's ending features a weak plot mechanic. It should also be noted that both science fiction and epics often feature a transcendental journey for the hero. So Shepard meeting the Catalyst child and talking philosophy about cosmic nature isn't unprecedented in the genre. What isn't okay is that in the end, the narrative emphasis is taken off the characters and dumped on the Catalyst child. Complaint 2. The ending was sad. Some people felt there should be a way to get a happier ending, and some people are also dismissing the reaction of the ME3 community by claiming they just can't handle an unhappy ending. The Mass Effect 3 ending suffers from being emotionally unfulfilling, not from being sad. Many great stories have sad endings and are still emotionally fulfilling. Mass Effect 3 fails in this regard, not because there's no way for Shepard to have it all, the game certainly communicated that the victory would come at a price, but because the audience is denied even the company of all the characters they care about at the end. Although most games feature a way to win everything, including Mass Effect 2, which, if you played your cards right, would allow you to come back from the suicide mission with your entire crew alive, this was not an expectation from the audience in Mass Effect 3. In almost every epic, the victory comes at a price, often at the expense of the hero. If the story is told well, it will not feel cheap or emotionally manipulative, and the audience will still be able to experience how the events affect the characters they care about. It's the last criteria that Mass Effect 3 fails. The ending is spent discussing dubious philosophy, first with the elusive man and later the Catalyst child. Nobody really cares about their dilemmas. Problem number 3. Choice didn't matter. Some people have complained that they felt the choices they made throughout the series didn't matter in the end. Others have said they do. This part is subjective, and I don't intend to discuss it much at all beyond saying that the belief that choices don't matter in the face of death is fairly nihilistic. What isn't subjective is that the Normandy, which contains most of the people you care about, will end up stranded on a mystery planet, and no galaxy-altering choice you can make can have any impact on that no matter what. This is where the audience is really ripped off by their choices not mattering. It would be a lot easier to accept being unable to have a perfect solution to the problem of the Reapers if the player could impact characters they care about. Although why Shepard can't take control of the Reapers, fly them all into the sun, and then ignore the Catalyst child's rules, and go home, is beyond me. But I digress. The player gets to resolve the problems of the Catalyst child however they see fit, but not anyone they care about. This is particularly painful for two reasons. 1. The game and the player have together decided what has value in the Mass Effect universe over the course of 3 games. The game has presented people, cultures, and missions to the player, and through choices the player has made, they have invested in them. Not having meaningful story with them at the end is a disappointment. And point next, some things just don't make sense. In a very objective way, there are parts of the ending that don't make sense. No matter what ending the player ends up with, there is a scene with Joker piloting the Normandy through a mass relay. The scene is reminiscent of 2001: A Space Odyssey, a movie the game plays homage to occasionally throughout the ending. But the real question is, why is the Normandy there? During the conversation with the Catalyst child, it's obvious that the space battle is still raging on outside, and the Normandy was supporting Commander Shepard on the ground battle a mere 15 minutes earlier. How did they get there in the mass relay, and what possible reason could they have for going there? Did Joker run away? They knew the Crucible was going to be used and involved the combined power of the entire mass relay network. You would think there would have been a memo to steer clear of the mass relays, lest they screw up the weapon that had enough energy to annihilate all of the Reapers and bring salvation to the galaxy. I've already brought up that Shepard aiming to resolve the dilemmas of the Catalyst Child is frustrating for the player, but it's also worth noting that the grand plan to maintain order is stupid. It is all contingent on the assertion that all created beings rebel and destroy their creators. The game contradicts this earlier with the peace attained between the Geth and the Corians. This was a 300-year-old conflict resulting in near genocide, but ultimately Shepard can not only get the two cultures living in peace, but in absolute harmony as the two cooperate for a brighter future. That bit of storytelling was moving, satisfying, and quite beautiful. It would have made for a great ending. The real problem with the Catalyst Child's plan, though, is that it's trying to prevent the destruction of organic life at the hands of synthetics by destroying organic life with synthetics. This is a stupid plan. Some might say the Catalyst Child was preventing the slaughter of all organic life by only slaughtering most organic life, but that, and now this part is subjective, still makes for a stupid ending. This trilogy has been held together by characters, storytelling, good science fiction, and killing robotic death machines named Reapers. To tie it all up with a high-concept ending hanging around the difference between the definition of completely committing universal genocide and mostly committing universal genocide is very unsatisfactory. Finally, if Commander Shepard lives, there is also the dilemma that you clearly see the Citadel explode with him on it. He's standing right there. And then he's on the ground in London again. Some have suggested that the final scene with the Catalyst Child is an indoctrination attempt by the Reaper Harbinger, and thus only Commander Shepard's psyche was interacting with the Crucible. It would be somewhat inconsistent with how the ending was communicated, which, by the way, was brilliant up until the Catalyst Child, but it would be similar to how the Prothean beacons from the first Mass Effect games worked, and the theory explains how Shepard's body didn't blow up. So, where does that leave us? Some people have been defending BioWare in the name of artistic integrity. I don't disagree with the fact that BioWare has made an artistically courageous decision with this ending, but I question the appropriateness of a high-concept ending in a trilogy that was focused on emotion and choice rather than intellectual concept. BioWare made a few mistakes with the ending, and while some complaints are subjective, others, like that debacle with the Normandy, are undeniable, and defending a mistake on the grounds of artistic integrity may seem noble in principle, but it does not promote better art. If the ending is committed to spending its precious minutes discussing issues of comic balance or the infinite possibility of space, then it should follow it up with some meaningful closure with the characters after the cataclysmic event. Shepard spent some time saying goodbye to his crew before the final mission, but after stranding them alone on an unknown planet in a radically altered galaxy, it wouldn't hurt to have a few lines of dialogue to help the audience say goodbye. The 30-second exposition shot with no dialogue simply isn't enough, and while the scene of characters stepping off of escape pods and looking out at a strange new world is classic science fiction, it's not really appropriate for the ending of a trilogy. The Mass Effect trilogy has been a remarkable achievement for gaming, and in my opinion Mass Effect 3 was not only the best of the series, but truly reflected BioWare's ability to thoughtfully handle user feedback. Each game was an improvement and refinement of the last, in all ways. The emotional communication throughout much of Mass Effect 3 in particular was masterful. By the end, I was sick of war, sick of killing, sick of seeing characters die at the hands of anime stereotypes, and I was ready for peace. The ending offered something different, and while I don't entirely condemn BioWare's attempt, the glaring omission of the poignancy offered throughout the rest of the game is a decision I feel can only be regarded as a mistake, and is something I do hope BioWare addresses. I don't want them to rip apart their vision of what they wanted to accomplish with the ending, but I do want them to balance it with what actually made the game great in the first place.